The basic principle behind a digital delay relies on digital audio conversion. The analog signal is quantized to a digital audio signal by an analog to digital converter. This signal will ultimately be converted back into analog audio with a digital to analog converter, but first it can undergo extremely precise and complex processing. Digital delays rely on mathematical functions and are therefore much less susceptible to noise, signal degradation, mechanical failure, and any of the other inconveniences of the previous delay unit designs. This is a double-edged sword though, because digital does what you tell it to do, but nothing more. Contrast that with the Echoplex or the other hardware units we've discussed, which can be much more unpredictable and mysterious. These analog devices often have a character which can be achieved by simply passing signals through them. The delayed sounds we're accustomed to hearing on our favorite recordings generally aren't pure repeats of the original sound. Instead, thanks to the quirks of the analog hardware, they'll usually exhibit some degree of saturation as well as roll-off at the extreme high and low frequencies, and a series of repeats that sound darker and darker each pass through the feedback loop. If you wanted to completely recreate the sound of a vintage delay unit using conventional digital tools, you may spend a long time manually shaping the sound from scratch. And you'll quickly find that delays that don't exhibit these analog style traits may sound unfinished, obtrusive, and unfamiliar. That's why the developers at Soundtoys and other companies dedicate so much time and effort to modeling these original hardware units with plugins. They do the legwork for us so that we can achieve those classic sounds without reinventing the wheel. And on top of that, you get those classic analog sounds in a digital environment with all of the benefits that that entails. Of course, there are benefits to digital delays. With digital delays, we can use ping-pong delays that bounce from left to right, or stereo delays with nuanced stereo behavior to create a much more rich and luscious environment for listeners. Digital delays also allow for multiple delay taps, which can be set independently from one another for even more complex rhythmic and textural effects. We can also become even more methodical and intentional about the delay times we use, dialing in a delay time by the fraction of the millisecond, or locking it into the exact BPM and rhythmic feel of the song. We're going to get back to the video in just a moment, but first I want to mention the Mixing Essentials course by Audio University, developed to help you harness 4 essential tools: EQ, compression, delay, and reverb. This course includes over 60 lessons, and it's not just theory. You'll see practical demonstrations for how to utilize these essential tools in your mixes. And if you should have any questions along the way, as a member you'll have access to myself and the course instructor, Professor Gabe Herman, who's been mixing professionally and teaching students for over 20 years. To get instant access to the course, become an Audio University member by using the link below this video. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. All right, now back to the video. One of the early digital delays, prime time, included an interesting function that employed prime number values to prevent long delays from stacking on top of each other, a problem that had existed in prior days. As revolutionary as the primetime delay was, it could still be used to its limits. For example, longer delay time could be cost prohibitive in those early days, and the only way to achieve longer delays was to make a sacrifice in fidelity by lowering the sample rate, adding a degraded quality to delay repeats that was unique to the early digital world. It's a unique and sought-after enough sound that Soundtoys even directly modeled this unit on its own primal tap delay. As digital audio has continued to get better and better, we've reached a point where your imagination is basically your only limitation. Each time the technology advanced, new quirks, limitations, and possibilities pushed creation forward. Said differently, all throughout the history of audio, when innovators encountered limits, they began to rethink ways to get around those limits, and new musical vocabulary emerged. And that in turn created a thirst to push the sounds and the technological discoveries even further. And this brings me back to the underlying point of this video. At every stage of the timeline, the imagination of the audio community was the only real limitation. Each time musical minds imagined a sound that was previously impossible, inventive minds found a way to make it a reality. And each time inventors came up with new technology, creators found new ways to push that technology to its limits. Whether the obstacle was delay time, multi-taps, or even just portability and durability. As technology developed, so did musical expression. And as musical expression developed, it pushed technology forward. It may seem like we've reached the end of innovation, but I challenge you to reject that thought. How will our limitations today create new possibilities tomorrow? Experiment and you'll find out.